This song says, no matter who you are, no matter where you go in your life, at some point you're going to need somebody to stand by you. Oh yeah, oh my darling, stand by me. No matter who you are, no matter where you go in life, you gonna need somebody to stand by you.
Welcome to the atoll of Fakarava, located in the Tuamotu archipelago in French Polynesia. French Polynesia is home to some of the most wonderful and most abundant coral reefs in the entire world. But over the past few years, these coral reefs have been dying off at alarming rates. But first, let's find out what a coral actually is. Corals may just look like rocks, but trust me, they're way more than that. As we zoom in on this coral, we can see that it's made out of hundreds of tiny little polyps. These are basically mouths, and they feed the coral. This close-up of a polyp shows its mouth, its stinging tentacles, and then its small digestive tract. These coral polyps grow on top of layers of limestone that the coral produces. These polyps may look like separate animals, but they're all connected, and they butt off one another. So in fact, you may see many polyps, but they're all one animal. You can see on this healthy coral there are tons of fish, and at night, the polyps release their tentacles, and they use their stinging cells to catch and eat prey. The coral doesn't get its beautiful vibrant colors on its own. It houses little algae called zooxanthellae that, through photosynthesis, using the sunlight, they produce oxygen and nutrients for the coral. They also give them their beautiful colors. In return, the coral allows them to live inside their cells. Doesn't look very colorful or vibrant, does it? That's because coral reefs are in danger of going extinct. Mere months ago, this was a lush, colorful, healthy reef. Now, it's as dead as my dead fish that died 6 years ago. What killed these corals? Rising ocean temperatures caused by climate change. The dead coral you see here is also called bleached coral. And no, it's not because someone dumped a bunch of bleach into the water. Remember the zooxanthellae algae that live in the coral? Well, When ocean temperatures rise by just 2 degrees, their photosynthesis mechanism stops working. The coral will notice this because it won't get as much nutrients as it did before, and therefore, seeing no benefit, it will kick out the zooxanthellae, therefore losing its bright, beautiful colors. There is also another side effect from kicking out the zooxanthellae. It loses its main source of nutrients, its oxygen and sugars it gets from photosynthesis. Without its main source of nutrients, the coral, white and bleached without the zooxanthellae, won't survive for more than a week unless water temperatures start to decline again. Bleached and dead coral cannot serve as a home for many of the ocean animals that used to live in them, but some animals will benefit from these bleached corals. Now, here to talk more about bleached corals are two scientists from the British Columbian Gulf Islands, Edith Kraus and Ken Kripps.
After the coral becomes bleached, it eventually dies because of that loss of the zooxanthellae and the important role they play in contributing nutrients to the coral. So they essentially starve to death, and then you get algae starting to take over, so the coral tissue begins dying and decomposing, and you'll actually notice it, if you touch the coral at that point, sort of flaking off of the coral skeleton, and that's when you start to see the algae growing on top of it. So once that coral skeleton's exposed, the algae have a place to go.
Because normally a living coral has mechanisms to prevent animals and plants from growing on them. So that's why a healthy living coral can keep things like barnacles or other kinds of invertebrates from actually attaching on that would normally attach to a rock. The big thing that impacts the ecosystem is the fish species and invertebrate species that rely directly on eating coral for food. Those will be some of the first animals to disappear. So that's the huge impact. So the marine diversity does decline. And the fish that feed on algae, their numbers may go up or their numbers stay healthy, but eventually even that may deteriorate over time. What we notice, some of the algae that ends up growing on the rock is not even edible for a lot of species of fish too, and that ends up taking over. And even the dead coral, their skeleton becomes weak, and when a storm does come through, which ends up all of a sudden destroying the habitat, the actual structural habitat that a lot of juvenile fish and invertebrates use to where they would grow up, as a nursery before they head out into more open water. So a living coral is strong and can withstand a lot of storms, but a dead coral reef, it breaks apart.
There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He's told us not to blow it, 'cause he knows